Hi there, everyone. Welcome to this short talk as part of the Virtual Genealogical Association 7th birthday. My name is David Ryan. I am a professional genealogist based in Cork City in Ireland. And for this, I will be taking you through the new National Archives of Ireland Census website. Now, any of you who do use the census are probably aware of this website. This is the old website. It's still in existence alongside the new one. And if you're not aware of the URL, you can just click here to go to it. But what I'll do start off with, I'll take you through the original website, and then I will go on to talk about the new one, just so that you have a better sense of what has actually changed. So normally, if you're using the old website, you'd select the year. You can see the old one there, back to 1821. Perhaps you just click on the new, kind of on the more options tab there, or you could maybe decide to browse by a specific place. But normally what we do is we just put in the surname. So we'll say, all right, that was a relatively recent one I was looking at, maybe in Cork. And of course, if you don't know exactly where in Cork they were from, obviously you have to leave these tabs blank. You click on search, and this was normally what you would be faced with. Now, even with the show all information, it doesn't necessarily help you narrow down your search because there are 1,564 Barretts on the 1901 surname just for Cork alone. And that did make it in the past quite difficult. Not just if you were searching for a particular individual, but maybe you were putting together some sort of report looking at individuals with a specific surname and where in Cork they were from, their professions, religion, etc., etc. So there wasn't too much help for that. But if you go on to the new website, as you can see here, it's changed a lot. It looks much nicer. It's much sleeker. I think the color scheme actually makes it stand out more. One of the first changes that you'll notice is that this page only brings you to the 19 or 1911 census records. If you wish to search the pre-1901 census fragments, you would have to click on the link here to this. So we'll open that in a new tab just so you can see. So, again, looks much the same. True counties, of course, you can see others. All of that. So some of it does look very similar to what was on the previous websites, except that now there's a much nicer drop-down menu for the census. So we'll search for Barrett's again. We'll see how many were in Cork. So just make it a bit easier there. Now, you notice right away that there are a lot more changes. So, obviously we're searching in Cork, that's fine. Surnames, okay, looking for Barrett, still quite a lot to go through, but Townland, you can now narrow it down directly. So, if you wanted to maybe put together a report and say, well, how many of a certain surname were living on a specific street at the time, or in a Townland, you can maybe you can go by district electoral division. So it saves you having to know the exact DED because on the old website, it could be very finicky. Not every, district electoral division was easy to search. We can check by age profile, see quite a broad spectrum there. So see, okay, well, who is this 99-year-old? So we see, oh, okay, we've Margaret Barrett here. You click on it, and you can actually get a preview of the census image right there. And then if you want to go into the household record, you can just click on there. So suddenly it is much, much clearer. You can also download the full household information as a CSV file. So if you're looking to import it into spreadsheets or some other type of file, that is much, much easier. And you can also just link to the record or print it. So you see, it is a bit easier. And then they have all the other various forms here. Now, of course, you should be aware that there will be obviously are differences between 1901 and 1911 census in terms of the amount of information they provide. The 1901 census did not record any of this information, and it rarely had any details on illnesses either. So we can go directly back to the search results without having to click back on the browser. We can maybe come out to say, so we can go back to the form. So we can change counties. We'll check, okay, how many Barretts were living in Tipperary? How many of these were male? Search. So, okay, not quite as many as there were from Cork. But another nice feature is that it's showing you when it comes to searching by religion, because when people were filling out the census form, they didn't always enter, they didn't necessarily put in, say, Roman Catholic. Sometimes they put down just Catholic. Sometimes they might just put in, RC. With Church of Ireland, it was, could sometimes be Irish Church. Sometimes they might say Anglican, or they might have been Church of England. So having this little filter in terms of religion is much, much easier. Occupation is also a very, very important one, because even if you might have been told that, oh, your ancestors worked as farmers, they owned a farm, there were many different types of definitions of farmer. So, sometimes you had agricultural laborer, farm laborer, general laborer. Okay, this one actually looks quite interesting. A showman's son. That's a surprising one. So, okay, we have two of these here in the townland of Killay in County Meath. Well, actually, one in County Westmeath, the other was born in Queen's County. So let's just see what exactly a showman did. Okay, so we have James Parrish, age 37, originally from Dublin, traveling showman. You can scroll over here, get all the further information. So yeah, this is an unusual one. So most of those that I search for this time tend to be farmers, but yeah, you do come across some very, very interesting ones. Now, one of the only complaints that I do have about the census form at the moment is that there is no way of going directly from 1901 to 1911 without having to go all the way back to, the search the census. So yeah, it would be nice if there was some sort of algorithm or some way of linking individuals between the two census. Because particularly in rural areas, houses didn't really have an address as such. They the number provided them was really just, the number that they were enumerated in. And this could change between census. So house number 9 in 1901 will not necessarily be house number 9 in 1911. And that just, makes it confusing. And then, of course, you also have situations where, say your family here is a traveling showman. Obviously, they probably moved around quite a lot. But certainly, this is an interesting family and one that I feel I'm going to have to dig into someday. So, but, we're going to the original census. So, again, this part at least is unchanged. You can see the original document here. And, knowing that they're able to read and write, at least you can see their handwriting. And then, of course, you have the other two forms here, the enumerator's abstract form. Now, initially, when this site went live, some of the links weren't working, but they seem to have ironed out most of the gremlins. And I was having farm settings. So yeah, when you're using the census, don't just rely on the household form. Remember that there were other documents which were created to support the household form. So, you can sometimes we'll get a lot more information, not just on the family, but also the house that they were living in. Now we go back to results. So back to form. Now I'm going to take a chance and see if I can actually find, let's see, more search options. We'll see if we can find this Bart family in 1911, if they were still in County Tipperary. At least we know there probably weren't that many who were working as showmen at the time. Okay, so they seem to have left. Let's take out Tipperary. No results. Okay, so that Bart family, either they retired from the showman business, or perhaps they immigrated, or the head of the family, Edinburgh, perhaps he died. So, yeah, again, you can get a lot of information just from these two surviving census records. And I've even found myself recently that in certain areas where maybe you have parish records where there are gaps, where they start later than in other areas, you can actually sometimes use the census. Because, if you go to 1911, it tells you that a couple have been married for 40 years. Then you can go back, you can look up their marriage record in the civil record. Then you can actually get, the names of the fathers from that. And say, especially if they were from a certain townland, maybe you can actually use that to try to build out these collateral relationships and say, that, okay, you know what? I can't find a baptismal record for this individual, but they have, the same name for their father as this individual who is my ancestor. They're from the same townland. It's unlikely that you would have two individuals with the same surname, or sorry, the same first name, and the same first name and surname in this townland. I say unlikely, but unfortunately, as I've learned from my own family, not always impossible. But it can at least give, without other documents such as birth or baptismal records or an obituary, it can at least lead you to potential siblings. And so, that can be, as I said, that can be useful for building out those relationships. Now, people will often ask, why was there no 1921 census? There was no 1921 census because Ireland was in a state of general anarchy in 1921. It would not have been possible to carry out anything in the way of a complete census of Ireland at that time. So the next census that was carried out was in 1926. And as I'm sure many of you know, there is a 100-year rule for census records in Ireland, which means that 100 years have to elapse before the records from that census are made public, similar to what exists in the UK. Now, previously, the impression that we'd gotten is that we would not see anything of the 1926 census until the 1st of January 1927, because that was usually how it was done in the past. It would be made available at the start of the next calendar year after the centenary. However, I think thanks to, you know, maybe more funding being available and better technology, news has reached all of us genealogists in Ireland that we will get the 1926 census on the centenary. So roughly this time next year, when you go to this website, and again, we'll go back. So you will be able to go to this box, or at least I assume will be on this website. You'll be able to go to this box and you'll see 1901, 1911, and 1926. At least that is the hope. Anyway, I'm sure there will be some teething problems. There will probably be a few gremlins, as is often the case. But it is still very, very exciting. And if you prefer to use the indexes to the census that are available on the subscription genealogy websites such as Ancestry, Find My Past, My Heritage, and Family Search, I would generally assume that they will probably be getting the transcriptions for the census as well. But I would always advise you, where possible, to use the National Archives of Ireland website because, again, you have access to everything right here at your fingertips and you can do a lot more with it. I would also, if you're looking for names of the townlands or the possible district electoral division that your ancestors were in, there are also other websites that you can check for lists of those. But at least for the basic search, start here with this website, the National Archives Census website. So thank you very, very much for that. I hope this was informative. I would always recommend that even if your ancestors had left Ireland by the time the census was carried out, that you should take some time just to explore it, play around with it. You never know. Maybe you will find some potential relatives. So thank you very much for that. I hope you have a lovely weekend and enjoy the rest of the presentations as part of the Virtual Genealogical Association 7th birthday presentations. Thank you. Bye.